Hello, it's Rebecca here from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today I'm designing a layout for Hip Kit Club, and I'm working with the gorgeous November 2021 kits. I absolutely love everything about these kits, and today is Product Focus Wednesday, and I've chosen to focus on the floral die cut pack that we get with the embellishment kit, as well as the fabric bows we get in the same kit. I absolutely love both of those, and also the embossing powder we get in the colour kit. It's a gorgeous silver embossing powder. It's called Silver Tinsel, really glittery and beautiful. So I'm going to get all of those products used on my page today. I also had a design team prompt to bring in some supplies from previous kits and make them work with the November kit and to create a festive layout. And at first I thought, oh, that is a huge ask. But actually I really enjoyed this. It was a great DT prompt and really got me sort of thinking. And I had this colour wheel pattern paper left from the August kit. It's by Vicky Bootin from her Colour Study collection. And I've decided to pick out some of the more Christmassy tones and make it work for a Christmas layout. And I think this was initially a summer collection, the Colour Study, but I'm going to show you here that it can work for a lovely festive layout as well. So I've picked out reds and greens because they are traditionally sort of Christmas colours, and I've also pulled out the darker navy blue because that works really well with my photo. So I'm going to have those four kind of triangle segments there from the wheel, and I've cut my photo in a circle as well. It's a photo of my little boy that was taken the other day. We went ice skating just to start off our festivities. We don't normally start till December, but we started early this month, also this year. So we went ice skating, and they had this gorgeous kind of archway that you walk through at the beginning with loads of baubles and candy canes and all sorts of Christmas things dangling down. And I managed to snap a photo of him stood in front of those, not exactly smiling, but I love the photo anyway, so I'm gonna use that photo today. I've pulled out a couple of papers here from the November kit. I've pulled out a red one and a green one, and I'm cutting some circles from them slightly bigger than my photo. You'll notice I've used a metal die to draw around there. That large die doesn't fit in my die cutting machine. I have a very tiny machine, which is why I always end up using it just as a template to draw around. And I wanted the circle slightly bigger than the photo, so I've drawn around it and then just cut slightly larger, leaving a border. And I'm distressing the edges, and I'm going to do exactly the same with the red pattern paper. These are both from the main kit and repeated in the paper kit. Just making that circle even bigger. I'm going to distress the edges and have those as a couple of layers behind my photo. So I'm going to get these layered up with some foam tape in between each layer. I love to have lots of kind of layers and dimension and texture on my pages, so I always like to raise my photos up with a bit of foam just to keep them kind of the focal point of the layout. And I'm going to have that sitting in the centre of the page with those kind of four coloured segments coming out diagonally. Now I wanted to add a bit of detailing to my background. I've pulled out the stencil from the September kit. So I've got that paper from Vicky Bootin from the August kit. This stencil was from the September kit. It's slightly different to the one that was initially advertised because we had some shipping delays. So I was sent this stencil instead. And actually it works really well for a festive layout. So I'm just using some white texture paste and a plastic kind of spatula just to press the texture paste through that stencil. And I'm just going to do that in those two open areas, sort of diagonally the other way from the patterned papers, just to add a bit more detail. So I let that texture paste dry for a little bit. It's not completely dry, but it's dry enough that I can carry on working and giving my stencil a quick clean, because otherwise texture paste is a nightmare to get off once it's dried. And I'm going to go ahead now and start trying to get these triangles stuck in place. And I do faff with these an awful lot, trying to decide. I knew I wanted them staggered, some shorter and some longer and overlapping, but it just took me a little while to get them to a point where I was happy with the design. And I'm using foam tape again to raise these up. Had a bit of trouble getting that to stick to the texture paste, probably because it's not dry yet. So I have to bring in some craft foam just to help me out there and get those in position. So again, just adding some foam behind my photo to help keep that my focal point and make it pop against everything else. And it's going to create loads of dimension, which I really love. And now I'm going to get to working on my embellishing. So I've pulled out the floral die cut pack from the embellishment kit, and I really tried to get this wreath to work. I was going to have it as a layer underneath my photo, but just because of the size I'd cut my circles of pattern paper, it meant that green one got completely covered up, and I really like that green paper, so I decided against the wreath. I wanted that green paper to show. And now I'm just going to pull out a few bits from this pack to embellish, and some of these bits have got lovely silver kind of foiled details on. Adds a little bit of sparkle, just a bit more of a festive feel. So I'm trying to pick out some bits with the silver on, because I am going to use that silver embossing powder, so that will tie in nicely with the silver. I've just added a few flowers. I've got a candle over on the right there, and then a few sprigs I'm just using to kind of extend those clusters. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a paper piercing tool just to bend up the petals and leaves and things, just to bring in a bit more texture and dimension. So now I'm going to get a couple of these fabric bows on my layout, and I'm really excited to be working with these because before joining the Hip Kit team, these were one of the things that I always saw was exclusives and always really loved and wanted. So I'm really glad that I finally get to work with them. And they are exclusive. The entire kit this month is exclusive. So it's all designed by Kimberly and Kim. And these are just stunning. The patterns and colours, they haven't disappointed at all. I'm so pleased that I finally got my hands on some Hip Kit fabric bows. So I'm just building the layers up, and I'm using red tape to stick them together because that's a bit stronger than sort of your average double-sided tape. And I'm just mix and matching the colours, trying to pull out fabric pieces that work with the colour scheme of the layout. So I'm going with kind of greens, reds, and kind of tealy turquoise colour to match the triangle up the top there, and also a couple of the flowers that I've pulled out from that die cut pack. And you can build these bows up in layers, so you get 3 different layers. You get the base layer, then you get a longer bit that you kind of fold over on itself to create the actual bow. You stick those together, and then you get a rectangular piece that you just wrap around them and stick on the back, and that's the bows completed. So I've made 2 of those. I'm going to have one up to the top left of my photo and one down kind of on the right, just sitting with that candle cluster there. And this is where I'm just curling these petals just to bring in a bit more texture and dimension to the page. Just makes everything look a bit more realistic, and I think it lifts the page a bit as well. If I'd stuck it all down flat, I just think it would have looked really boring, whereas this kind of lifts it and elevates the page, and just makes it much more appealing for me. So I've bent all those petals up, and I'm adding some foam behind them just to raise them up a bit. I'm only using a tiny bit of foam, and I'm using some glossy accents because, like I mentioned, some things don't always stick to texture paste very well, and glossy accents is quite strong stuff. So I'm hoping that that will hold. And I'm just going to work my way around the layout now, getting all of these bits and pieces stuck in place. Again, raising some stuff up with foam, others sticking down flat. I'm going to get those 2 candy canes just tucked behind that bow up the top there. I really wanted to get those on the page because there's a few candy canes in my photo kind of hanging down behind my little boy. And I don't actually like candy canes. They're all peppermint flavour, aren't they? So none of us in my house actually eat them. So this was a perfect opportunity to use them because there definitely won't be any photos of us eating candy canes, I can promise you. So glad to have got those on a page. I love the way they look. I'm just not a fan of the taste. So So I'm absolutely loving how this layout is coming together. I'm really impressed that I'm managing to mix and match different kits and still make it look Christmassy. And talking of which, these star stickers, they're clear stickers. These are also from the September 21 hip kit. And I'm using some of the green, red and blue ones to match that Vicky Boutin paper. And again, I just love that it's all working and coming together with a real festive feel. Now I'm pulling out the stamps and dies that you get with the November kit. I'm going to add a couple of these on, so you get this lovely Christmas tree, and I'm going to use them with the November colour kit. So you get 3 ink pads by Catherine Paula Designs. You also get 3 stencils, and it's kind of like a layered stencil, and it kind of makes it like a tartan pattern. So you can have a good old play with those. I'm really excited to use those. You can get different colours, different variations on the patterns and stuff, so they're going to be fun. And you also get that silver embossing powder, so quite a bit in this month's colour kit. But I've used the red ink pad by Catherine Paula. It's called Polished, and I'm using that to stamp a Christmas tree, and then I'm using the coordinating metal dies to cut that out, and I'm going to use that as an embellishment on my page. So I've raised that Christmas tree up with some foam and just stuck it up and layered it underneath my photo and that bow in the top left there. And I'm going to use the Festive Fun stamp for my title. And I had a little bit of a play with this. I'm not sure whether it worked out better to stamp it first and then try and cut it out with a die, or cut it out first and then stamp. I tried both ways, and in the end I settled for cutting it out first and then stamping. Just found it was a bit easier to try and line it up. And I didn't get it perfect, but it's good enough for me. It doesn't look out of place at all or anything. It just kind of gives it a white shadowed effect, which I really liked. So I've used the green ink for that, which is called Seafoam. And that stamped really well and cut really nicely as well. I love the hip kit dies, they do cut through really nicely. So I've got my title stuck down with some foam just under my bow there on the red triangle piece. And now I'm coming in with some chipboard pieces. These are from the Pocket Life kit. They're kind of like stars or kind of Christmas patterns. I've added a few red and green ones of those and got those stuck in place, just extending those kind of diagonal areas out a bit. And I've also added a couple of the chipboard flare from the Pocket Life kit as well, just to tuck those in. I really tried to use this chipboard piece from the September kit just to bring in a bit more of the older stash. It said, is it Fall Memories or Fall Moments? And I'd cut Fall off and was trying to get the, I think it's Memories it said on, because I loved the green, it matched perfectly with my layout, but I just couldn't find a place where I was happy with it. So unfortunately that one didn't make the cut. Put that to one side and I'll use that on another layout. But I really love how this is looking, and I'm just going to finish it off for now with some white splatters. I wasn't meant to do the white splatters yet because I haven't done my heat embossing, but I got really carried away and put my white splatters on and created loads of snow on my festive layout, and then realised that my page was wet and I had to put it to one side. So it got really carried away here. I've just used watered down white gesso for my splatters because I find it sits on the surface of patterned papers and embellishments really nicely and stays quite white. So I'm going to pop that to one side, and then I have to come back a bit later in the day to finish off my layout. And I'm really sorry, the lighting is terrible in the afternoon in my house. I really do have to try and get everything done in the morning, so the lighting is a bit dull now. But I've just come back in to finish off my layout with some heat embossing, and I'm using the chipboard numbers that we got in the September kit. I've just got 2021 I've pulled out and a few of the hearts, and I'm just peeling the stickiness off of the back of them because I know that heat embossing is quite messy with me anyway. I knock it everywhere, but I didn't want that powder all sticking to the sticky on the back. So just taking some time to peel all of that off, and then I'm going to go about heat embossing and turning all of these lovely metallic silver. So I'm using a heat embossing pen. I've got different sort of mediums I can use for heat embossing. I've got a pen, I've got a dabber by Tim Holt, and I've also got an embossing ink pad. And it depends what I'm embossing, depends which one I use. For things like chipboard, I tend to use my pen, and I love heat embossing chipboard. It goes, so not chipboard, wood veneer, and it heat embosses really nicely, and it doesn't burn or anything. So one of my favourite ways to use wood veneer. So I'm just effectively colouring in the surface with that embossing pen, and then I'm either pouring the powder on or dabbing it down in the powder, and getting that covered in the silver powder. And then I'm going to bring in my heat gun and let the magic happen. And I find it so mesmerising watching embossing powder kind of melt and set. It's really lovely to watch. So I've just got all of those covered now. I'm just going to carefully move them to another sheet of paper, just trying to shake off the excess, and then what's left on this first sheet I will pour back into the bottle. It doesn't actually take a lot of powder to heat emboss, so this pot that we've got in the November kit will probably last me years, because you get loads in a pot and it really doesn't use that much to heat emboss. I've done all of these pieces and it doesn't look like I've used any from the pot at all. So that will last a very long time. And I'm just trying to now melt that powder. My heat gun is quite powerful, so it's blowing all the little hearts around. It's quite comical to watch really, but wasn't very funny at the time, as you can imagine. I'm just using my tweezers to try and hold things in place so that I don't burn my fingers. But some of the bits haven't taken too well, just where I've used my fingers and held the bits and the powder's come off. So a few of them I'm just going to give a quick second coat on, and that doesn't matter, you can do 1 or 2 coats. It's not going to damage them in any way, it just makes it look a little bit more intense with the silver, which is never a bad thing. So those are all done now, and they dry really quickly. They cool down really quick. You don't need, if you pick them up immediately, they probably will burn your fingers, but it only takes a few seconds, and they're cooled down enough to handle. And then I'm just going to position these on my layout. So I've got 2021 up on the top left there on that lovely green segment, and then I've just scattered the hearts around the top and the title there, just to kind of disperse that silver evenly. And then that will be me finished for today. Now I'll give you a quick close-up. I love how this looks, and I'm so gutted that I've lost the light in my craft room at this point, so it doesn't really do it justice on camera, but it really is a lovely metallic sparkly silver. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this process and you like the layout, and it's inspired you to dig out some of your older stash and use it alongside the November kits to make a festive layout. I was really surprised at how much fun it was, and how festive the layout actually turned out in the end. I really love this. Probably one of my favourite layouts that I've made for Hip Kit so far. So I really do hope that it gives you some inspiration. I will pop some links down in the description box below to the November kits. I'll also link the products I've used from previous kits and which kits they've come from. And I'll also leave a link to the Hip Kit Club group Facebook page as well, if you want to head over and join us. But thanks very much for joining me. I'll leave you with the close-ups, and I'll see you next time.